We are continuing our exploration of pure mysticism, of which most of the time I talk about the practical applications. But now and then it is very useful, even necessary, to remind ourselves of what are the fundamentals of mysticism, which has been defined as the art of union with reality. To the extent that I learned the art of identifying myself with reality, to that extent I become more real. So, when the Buddha talks about our almost being a slave, being enticed by the fleeting phenomena of the world, it is not to deprecate us, but it is to remind us that our legacy is vast. If I can put the theme of the spiritual life in one short sentence, you can see the contrast between the spiritual life and the worldly life that is lived by almost all today. What matters in the world today is what I have. What matters on the spiritual path is what I am. We have always to remember that whatever I may have, if I don't know who I am, I'm likely to run into trouble all the time.
All right, here we are, third and final part of the meditation series. We did it. This is the spiritual level of meditation. Welcome to the absolute top level of the temple. This is the secret esoteric knowledge. No, I'm kidding. This is the third and final part of the meditation series, what I am calling the spiritual level of meditation. This is a big topic that can go in a million different directions, but I'm going to keep this as simple and basic as possible. So first, let's try to clearly define exactly what we're doing here. What do I mean when I say the spiritual level of meditation? Because it's a loaded word. The spiritual level of meditation could be thought of as the quest of fully integrating mindfulness meditation into every aspect of your life, into decision-making, feeling, thinking, behaving, etc. And not only that, but using mindfulness meditation as a means to reach some ultimate personal goal, which we'll talk about in a second. So for example, a lot of beginning meditators start to meditate to gain some kind of short-term benefits. They don't want to change the way they operate or think. They just want relief from feelings, thoughts, emotions, whatever. It's almost used as more of a surface-level band-aid. But if we continue to meditate, to continue to notice our thoughts and feelings and look deeply into them over and over, we start to notice that what we thought only required a band-aid might actually require major surgery. Like we said, people tend to meditate because they need help in some aspect of their lives. Something's wrong, but maybe they're not sure what it is or what to do about it. It's like living in an old house that's a fixer-upper, but not knowing anything about construction. The walls show signs of mold and water damage, and you're constantly just trying to paint over it. And sure enough, the water keeps coming through and the mold just bleeds right through whatever paint we put on it eventually in time. We often take the same approach to our minds. We know something's wrong, but we think we can just patch it up and gloss over it. The spiritual level of meditation is ripping the walls open and seeing what's actually going on, finding where the water's coming in, and sealing up the leak once and for all. If our minds are fundamentally scattered, or if we're being primarily fueled by unhealthy beliefs or emotions, then we can meditate all we want, but we'll most likely stay in the same spot mentally and become frustrated and give up. And so for that reason, we're going to start this series by examining how belief systems play a role in meditating and why it's important to look deeply into what we believe and then clarify our beliefs. We mentioned something a minute ago about using meditation as a means to achieve some ultimate personal goal. Many of the Eastern spiritual practices have a concept of what this looks like. You've probably heard about nirvana, enlightenment, and other stuff like that. And most people kind of view these things with a grain of suspicion or like disbelief. But what most people typically don't talk about are the smaller versions of those seemingly humongous and impossible goals. These are the prerequisite checkpoints for achieving these legendary mystical states of consciousness. For instance, the Hindus have this idea of samadhi, which means agreement, specifically agreement within one's mind. This is thought to arise after a person really practices a certain system of meditation for some time, where all the aspects of one's mind come into agreement with one another rather than being scattered between competing urges and concerns. Now, another reason that I'm calling this a spiritual level of meditation is because I think that currently people in the West are meditating under the paradigm of science. And science is great for certain things, but in my opinion, with meditation, it leaves a ton of stuff off the table. And the stuff I'm talking about is more of the longer-term goals that can shape your meditation practice and give you something to actually look forward to. Check this out. Okay, so this is a quick example of what I'm talking about. We mentioned that the spiritual level of meditation is to pursue a sort of an end goal, a sort of state that we can attain through meditation. It's not just to kind of calm down. We can do that if we want, but if we really want to take it to the next level, we need some sort of goal to work towards. Now, the best goal that I can come up with within the scientific context would be to achieve a state of sanity. And if you look up what sanity means, the definition of it is just soundness of mind, which is kind of vague, but we know, I guess, we have an idea of what that is. So look at this right here, how to achieve sanity. The first thing that pops up. This is my critique of meditating within a scientific context. It doesn't really give you anything that compelling to aim for. And say, okay, well, it gives you sanity. Okay, we have sanity. What's the roadmap to achieving sanity? Where's the clear and concise roadmap? Well, here's part of 10 ways to keep your sanity. Look for sunshine. Plan your days and weeks. Limit news and social media checking. Get fresh air every day. Prioritize exercise. Pick playlists and podcasts carefully. Cook healthy, nourishing meals. And read books, real books. And I think 9 is meditating, funny enough. And 10 is connecting with friends. So again, not bad advice. But is this the stuff that could keep you tethered to a regular meditation practice? For me, no. This is kind of just a hodgepodge of stuff. And again, I'm not saying like this is the ultimate answer of science, but I've looked around for a lot of them, and I haven't seen many that are different or better than this, except for ACT, which we'll get to later, which if you read ACT, if you learn about acceptance and commitment therapy, which I've covered before, and you read about Buddhism and all these spiritual traditions, you'll see that ACT borrows very, very heavily from this kind of, let's call it the spiritual level of meditation, but then puts it into scientific terms, which again, if that works for you, cool. None of this is to promote one thing over the other, but to just show people that there are more options than they think they have. So let's jump over to Buddhism. So if we're meditating within a Buddhist framework, again, if you want to do it, cool. If you don't want to do it, whatever. I'm not here to kind of sell any type of framework, but just to illustrate that within the spiritual level of meditation, we get a little more guidance and we can aim for higher states. So, within Buddhism, you're not just going for sanity, you're going for enlightenment, for nirvana. Well, how do you reach that? By following what's called the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I'm not going to go into all of these things because, again, it's like I have a very weak understanding of them, but I have read about them and they're pretty compelling. They're pretty good. And if I were to sit down, or anyone were to sit down and actually follow these things and put them into practice, I have a belief that they would experience serious benefits. Now, I don't see this kind of thing in science because science can't talk about a thing like right livelihood. It's not scientific to talk about, but it's incredibly useful to think about and talk about. But you don't get that within just a strictly scientific mode of meditation. That's why I'm saying if we can kind of suspend our rigid adherence to one worldview and start to explore some others, we can get some super helpful stuff in terms of crafting our own practice that we find meaningful and personally useful, and try to use that to reach a, let's say, higher state of awareness or a more functional state of awareness. That's my point. All right, so we saw that little example, again, it's the best I can do, but for simplicity's sake, let's say that the standard run-of-the-mill mode of meditation here in Western countries usually lies within a scientific context, meaning science is the system of belief that we are meditating within. And this is kind of obvious if you think about it, since the benefits that we can hope to experience under this scientific mode of meditation tend to be portrayed in personal physical terms. We're talking about lowering cortisol, the stress hormone. We're talking about easing the heart rate, increasing gray matter in the brain, and all of this is fine. But it can also limit us to those benefits where there are potentially more to be had. The practice within the scientific mode is capped by the limitations by its own belief system, meaning all we can ever hope for within the strict adherence to this worldview is basically temporary relief. And as far as I can tell, that's all we're really getting when we meditate strictly within this context. And again, I'm 100%, I swear, if that works for you, good. The point isn't to be like, shame on you for this. It's to be, for a lot of people, it's my own belief that doesn't necessarily get the job done. I think we can do better. So that's what taking it to the next level is for. If that first level works for you, cool, like we said before. If breathing through the diaphragm and calming yourself down is enough for you, that's awesome. Do that. And if you can just kind of do the stuff of the mental level and work on that for a while and that's enough for you, sweet. This is just for people who say, all that stuff's cool, but I feel like I could use a little more of this. Well, here it is. And again, this isn't to bash science. Science rules. It's 10 out of 10 in terms of its practical applications. It helps us stay alive, stay comfortable, and all of that good stuff. But in terms of, immaterial stuff, how we think and feel, it leaves a lot to be desired. Even before all the COVID stuff, anxiety, depression, suicide, addiction, all were on the uptick. Science, for all of its gifts and whatnot, seems to be missing the mark on some fundamental level, a level that's maybe hard to define or talk about, but it's felt nonetheless and can be reflected through mental health statistics. Science, like we said, does a great job at extending the human lifespan, but doesn't seem to be doing such a great job at giving us something to live longer for. So I guess the spiritual level of meditation, another definition of it, could be taking your practice out of this realm of science and into a more lush and vibrant belief system of your own choosing, especially one that feels right to you. Personally, and this is kind of my belief here, I feel like a great deal of human beings are at a sort of impasse. The scientific worldview, as spiritually bleak as it is, oftentimes feels better than turning to the other option, which would be organized religion, which sometimes seems almost ridiculous in light of all of the stuff that we know today. So most of us just kind of hang in the balance, somewhere between these worldviews in a state of non-committal confusion. And my clear goal for this whole series is to help anyone who wants to meditate their way out of this strange spot that we find ourselves in today toward greener spiritual pastures, while also not having to deny that dinosaurs existed or be forced to believe anything that doesn't feel right to you. Hans Torvast, an author of Vedanta, Heart of Hinduism, kind of sums it up with this quote: "We nevertheless seem to be at a turning point today. Awareness of our tragic isolation and longing for a wider context within which man can once again experience himself as part of the universe, not just as its conqueror, is growing steadily." Here's another quote. This one's by Carrie F. Baines and can be found in the preface of Carl Jung's book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. "Between these two extremes of traditional faith and militant rationalism, it may be said that the middle position is held by those people who know that they have outgrown the church as exemplified in Christianity, but who have not therefore been brought to deny the fact that a religious attitude to life is as essential to them as a belief in the authenticity of science. They are convinced that if they can attain more knowledge of the inner workings of their own minds, they can achieve the new attitude that is demanded without having on one hand to regress to what is but a thinly veiled medieval theology, or on the other, to fall victim to the illusions of the 19th century ideology." End quote. And by 19th century ideology, what they're referring to were the systems of philosophy that viewed religious thought as a useless artifact of primitive people and sought to replace it with a total dedication to logic, reason, government, economics. And if you follow World War II, Mao's China, all that stuff, it all ended pretty badly with genocides, prison camps, totalitarian dictators. Definitely not the stuff of science-based utopia. And without getting too far off topic, Jung believes that this spiritual inclination of humans was not only real, but essential for our mental health. Here's a quote from Jung himself. "Among all my patients in the second half of life, that is to say over 35, it is safe to say that every one of them fell ill because he had lost what the living religions of every age have given their followers, and none of them has really healed who did not regain his religious outlook. This, of course, has nothing whatsoever to do with a particular creed or membership of a church." And notice Jung saying this religious attitude has nothing whatsoever to do with a particular creed or membership to a church. I mean, there's nothing wrong with joining one if it resonates with you and you find it useful. That's awesome. But what Jung's talking about here is something he's written about extensively, about the psychological benefits of contacting what he calls the numinous, or that which goes beyond thought and words, that which brings us peace simply by experiencing it. And again, does that sound familiar? We're talking about enlightenment. We're talking about nirvana. Here's the same concept just popping up in a different tradition. Basically, there's this idea that if we train our minds properly and align ourselves to the right things in a way that's authentic to ourselves, we can experience these blissful states that might pop up and kind of come and go, or maybe we can just kind of attain them and be at some new level. But it's well documented and well written about that human beings do their best when striving toward this stuff that Jung's calling the numinous, that in other traditions they have other words for it, but it's all the same idea. We can train our mind, we can design our life toward experiencing these blissful states and growing as a result, and healing ourselves as a result. So like we said, one of the main goals, if not the main goal of the spiritual level of meditation, is altering ourselves through meditation, mind, body, and soul, so that we can directly experience the numinous, whatever that is to us, the bliss, wholeness, oneness, or whatever, rather than merely relieving stress before a job interview. We're going for the gold here in the spiritual level. We're trying to experience the version of the numinous that only we can personally experience. Whatever that state of awe, clarity, oneness, whatever that is for you. The idea here is that you can work your way toward that. And while I can't personally attest to becoming enlightened or achieving a state of nirvana, obviously, I can definitely say that the benefits of seeking those states are very real. And why is that? It's because the traditions that guide us toward the attainment of those states ask a lot from us. They demand that we rip our house down to the foundation and rebuild it, rather than just going and getting fresh air or being selective about what podcasts we listen to. Which again are both decent pieces of advice, but don't go far enough in my opinion. So that's the end of part one. And again, I told you we're going to keep these things short and sweet, but we're going to end with a little meditation, trying to kind of organize this material in our heads in a way that we can only do through mindfulness and contemplation. So, see you in the next one after this thing. Alright, so just like we did before in all the other videos, we're going to start to meditate by doing proper breathing. Our eyes are closed. You have a hand on the chest, one hand on the stomach. We're going in through the nose. Feel the stomach rise, and then out through the mouth. The belly falls. And again, the idea here is to make our stomach rise, not our chest. That's where we're breathing through the diaphragm. This is helping our bodies physically to relax. So in through the nose, belly rises, and out through the mouth. Do a couple more breaths like this. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So once we have our breathing down, we're feeling relaxed, we're in a nice rhythm, try to see if you can meditate on a question, meaning this: a question is going to be posed to you. See if you can meditate on it, meaning watch what your mind produces in terms of thoughts and feelings around what is said, rather than trying to make yourself think about it or figure out an answer, if that makes sense. Now, before you get the question, just remember, keep breathing. Don't lose that rhythm. Keep that breath going. Here's the question. Why are you meditating? Now, whenever you're ready, see if you can let go of the goal of meditating on this question, of watching your mind spontaneously produce stuff versus thinking like normal. Let go of this idea of needing or wanting to focus or meditate at all. Just let your mind do whatever it feels like, knowing that whatever it's doing is ultimately okay. And as you do this, as you disregard everything and just let go, try to pay attention to what it feels like to do this. Maybe it feels peaceful, maybe it feels weird or uncomfortable. Either way, just feel it. There's no need for thought and no need to not think either. You're just being there. You're looking and knowing you're okay with whatever is going on at this moment. Now imagine that you're letting this go too, this desire to even be aware of anything. Just as you exhale, just let go. Try to really imagine and feel the sense of letting go, like a trust fall. There is nothing to do. There's nothing you need to do. There is no way you need to be other than how you currently are. Imagine that when you fully let go, that someone or something is behind you to catch and hold you. And within this space, everything is actually okay. It's handled, taken care of. And you are just here experiencing it all. Experiencing being alive. There is no need to gain any information or skill or be different in any way at this moment. Being as you are is simply enough. What would it take for you to feel like this normally? What would you have to believe or not believe? What would you have to do or not do? Meditate on this for a moment.